The night I found my courage began like any other, with the quiet hum of the oven and the simmering scent of regret. Liam Westbrook remembered a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in his hand as he recounted the tale. Freya Carlyle, his wife of 10 years, spoke without turning from the vanity mirror. Her hand, steady and practiced, applied a final stroke of mascara. "I'm heading out on a date. Try not to let the green-eyed monster get you." Her voice was as casual as commenting on the evening weather. No preamble, no apology, just that. Liam had just emerged from the bathroom, still dabbing toothpaste from the corner of his mouth, genuinely believing she was primping for their planned anniversary dinner. He'd slow-cooked her favorite lamb ragu, painstakingly arranged a centerpiece candle, and uncorked that specific Chianti she adored, the one with the rustic, chipped label. She never even glanced his way. Her gaze remained fixed on her own reflection, a soft smile playing on her lips, as if the reality unfolding behind her was merely a scene from a forgotten film. Liam stood frozen in his wool socks, a perfectly plated serving of ragu cooling in his hands. He had literally just set her portion on the table. "A date?" he managed, the words tasting like ash. She finally turned, her smile unwavering, and offered a dismissive shrug that plainly said, "You heard me." Then, with a click-clack of her designer heels across the polished oak floor, she swept past him, retrieved her phone, and called out, "He's waiting downstairs." "Don't make this difficult, Liam." He didn't stoop to ask who he was. He refused to grant her that small sliver of satisfaction. Instead, still clutching the absurdly heavy plate, he followed her to the entryway. "Wait, you're forgetting something." She paused, a flicker of irritation in her eyes, and rolled them. "What now?" Liam walked back to the kitchen, retrieved a thick manila envelope he'd kept hidden behind the cookbooks for weeks, a contingency plan he'd never truly expected to use, and handed it to her. She opened it. The smug smile vanished, replaced by a stunned, hollow expression. Inside were the divorce papers, already signed, dated, and meticulously prepared. Liam said nothing. He simply returned to his chair, sat down, and began to eat his lonely dinner, while Freya stood rooted to the spot. The muffled horn of a car sounded once, then again from below. She left, but the triumphant smirk she'd arrived with was conspicuously absent. What would you do if your entire world shattered in a single, silent moment? Liam couldn't recall chewing that night. The plate was empty, and his fork lay abandoned on the floor by the time he truly registered his surroundings. Yet the food had tasted of nothing but grit, the expensive Chianti like vinegar. His hand trembled so violently he spilled some wine, the crimson liquid seeping into the grain of the wooden table like blood into cloth. He simply stared at it, watching it spread, a chilling thought echoing in his mind. So this is what betrayal looks like. Quiet, slow, unstoppable. She didn't return that night. Not a single text, no whisper of an apology, no flimsy explanation. The woman he'd shared a decade of his life with had stepped over the remnants of their shared existence, as if avoiding a casual puddle on the sidewalk. He pictured her in a bustling restaurant, laughing at a stranger's facile joke, perhaps even uttering something abhorrent like, "My husband never made me feel this alive." The thought made his skin crawl with a visceral disgust. Around 1:30 a.m., footsteps echoed outside their apartment door. For a fleeting instant, his foolish heart soared. He thought perhaps, just perhaps, she'd finally come to her senses. Maybe she'd knock, whisper an apology, offer anything. But the steps continued past their door, fading into the silent hallway. Just a neighbor, just life continuing its indifferent march, as if nothing had irrevocably shifted. Liam slept on the couch, the damning envelope still resting on the coffee table. He considered hiding it again, pretending none of it had transpired. He could even send her a weak text message, something utterly predictable like, "We can talk in the morning." That would be so typical of him, Liam the forgiving, Liam the doormat. But he didn't. Instead, he walked to the walk-in closet and pulled out the small, elegant leather suitcase she'd given him for their 3rd anniversary. He began to pack it, not for himself, but for her. Every piece of clothing he knew she cherished. Her favorite suede boots, the ludicrously expensive moisturizer she always warned him not to touch. He arranged everything meticulously, zipped the case shut, and left it by the front door with a terse note. "No need to unpack. You've already moved on." Then, as the first fragile streaks of dawn kissed the window panes, he sank to the floor beside that packed suitcase and waited. Not for her, but for whatever inevitable reckoning lay ahead. Here's what no one tells you about betrayal. It's not just the grand acts, but the quiet, consistent erosion of trust that truly devastates. He didn't know it yet, but that morning wouldn't unfold as either of them anticipated. The sun had barely kissed the drapes when the faint click of the lock broke the pre-dawn stillness. Liam didn't flinch. He remained on the floor, knees drawn to his chest, eyes fixed on the suitcase he had packed, a silent farewell he hadn't yet found the strength to voice. When she finally pushed open the door, Freya nearly stumbled over it. She didn't speak at first, merely stood in the entryway, still in last night's shimmering cocktail dress, heels clutched in her hand, mascara smudged as though she'd been rubbing her eyes, or worse, weeping. Her gaze fell to the suitcase, then shifted to Liam, and something in her carefully constructed facade wavered, as if she hadn't expected to find him so utterly composed, so terrifyingly still, asking no questions. Liam offered no words, only a slight nod towards the suitcase's handle. Freya finally broke the brittle silence. "You're serious?" she whispered. He shrugged. "You told me not to wait up." I complied. Her face tightened, a flash of anger threatening to erupt, but she seemed too exhausted to ignite it. She stepped inside, kicking the door shut with the heel of her bare foot. That familiar, expensive perfume still clung to her skin, now tainted by the stale scent of a stranger's cologne. It struck him with more force than any verbal accusation ever could. "I didn't cheat, if that's what you're imagining," she declared, crossing her arms. Liam wanted to laugh, but his mouth was too dry, his throat too constricted. "You went on a date with another man while still legally married. I'm struggling to find the part of that equation that isn't betrayal." She opened her mouth to retort, then visibly faltered. Her eyes dropped to the manila envelope on the coffee table, the one containing their divorce papers. She approached it slowly, cautiously, as if it might bite her. She picked it up, thumbed through the first page, then the second. Her breath hitched. "They're signed," she whispered, the words barely audible. Liam nodded. "Last night, before you left." Her knees nearly buckled. For a moment, he thought she might collapse, but she didn't. Instead, she clutched the envelope like a shield, her voice laced with a raw tremor. "Why now?" Liam finally met her gaze directly. "Because this time I saw the crash coming, and I refused to watch it in slow motion." She didn't cry. Not yet. But her silence spoke volumes. In that silence, it was about to get a whole lot louder. She remained standing for an unnervingly long time, clutching those papers as if they held a riddle she couldn't decipher. It was almost pitiful, watching her eyes skim each line, as though she expected the words to shift, the ink to vanish if she stared long enough. But nothing disappeared. Not his signature, not the ominous timestamp, and certainly not the suitcase still stationed like a silent sentinel by the door. "I didn't think you'd ever actually do this," she said at last, her voice softer than Liam had heard in months. "I didn't think you'd ever walk out on me for a date," he countered, not bothering to soften the blow. "But here we are," the stunned expression on her face, as if she couldn't comprehend his newfound resolve, made him realize just how far he'd allowed their relationship to spiral. He'd spent so long sidestepping conflict, striving to be the bigger person, that she had come to treat his boundaries as entirely optional. And perhaps, until now, they had been. "I didn't sleep with him," she said, finally sinking onto the edge of the couch. "We just talked. That's all." Liam almost scoffed. "And you needed to wear your most striking dress and your signature perfume just for a casual chat." "I wanted to feel something," she snapped back, as if that alone justified her actions. "I wanted to remember what it was like to be seen. You haven't truly looked at me in ages." He should have argued. He should have raised his voice, but he didn't. Instead, he asked the question that had been clawing at his chest for weeks. "Was it him?" Liam inquired, his voice low. "The man from your gym? The one you insisted was just friendly?" Her silence offered a damning answer before she even uttered a word. "Unbelievable," he whispered, leaning back in his chair, a profound weariness settling over him. "You honestly believed you could just float above all this? That you could test the limits, and I would simply fall back into place just like always?" She looked up at him, and for the first time in years, Liam saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not anger, not frustration, but raw, unvarnished fear. Because she had finally realized something crucial. He wasn't angry. He was done. No more pleading. No more agonizing over every perceived slight. No more pretending they could mend something she never truly valued. Then came the knock. One sharp, impatient rap on the front door. They both froze. Freya's face drained of color. And Liam knew, without her uttering a single syllable, that whoever was behind that door wasn't merely early. He wasn't supposed to come at all. Little did I know, the morning was about to bring an even sharper shock, proving some secrets refused to stay buried. The knock came again, louder this time. It wasn't a friendly tap, nor a neighborly inquiry. It was sharp, deliberate, imbued with the kind of unshakable confidence only someone entirely oblivious to the imminent fallout could possess. Freya sat frozen on the edge of the couch, her hands clenched into white-knuckled fists in her lap. Her eyes met Liam's for a split second, and in that fleeting moment, he saw something he hadn't witnessed in her for a very long time: pure panic. She didn't move. The insistent knock sounded a third time. "I'm not answering it," Liam stated, his voice unervingly calm. Freya shot up from the couch. "He wasn't supposed to come here. I didn't invite." Liam cut her off, his gaze unwavering. "But he knows where we live." That silenced her. Her mouth opened, then closed again, as if she wanted to concoct an explanation but couldn't find a version of the truth that wouldn't paint her in an even worse light. "I'll tell him to leave," she whispered, already moving towards the door. Liam didn't stop her. He merely watched. He wanted to see how she would navigate this predicament. He wondered if she would lie to him too, or if this man even knew Liam existed. Had she introduced herself as single or merely in the middle of something complicated? That was always the favored euphemism for those attempting to rebrand betrayal as some form of personal growth. She opened the door just a crack, stepping halfway into the hallway. Liam could still hear every word with chilling clarity. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice sharp with ill-concealed alarm. "I thought you said you were alone," the man's voice replied, a casual query that made Liam's stomach churn. He wasn't supposed to be here," Freya stammered, her composure rapidly unraveling. "And yet, here I am," Liam announced, rising from his chair. He stepped into view. Freya's body stiffened, as if he had just dramatically yanked back a curtain. The man appeared to be about Liam's age, perhaps a touch younger, meticulously groomed, exuding an irritatingly smug confidence. He wore a cologne Liam remembered smelling on Freya once before, the morning after a particularly late spin class. "Ah," the man said, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. "So this is a husband." He didn't flinch. No awkward apology, no feigned civility, not a shred of decency. Just a condescending grin and a chin nod, as if Liam were merely a waiter bringing him the check. "I'll make this very simple," Liam stated, stepping closer, his voice low but firm. "You have exactly 3 seconds to turn around and disappear from our lives forever. After that, I'm calling the building manager, and trust me, he's significantly less polite than I am." The man chuckled, an irritatingly self-assured sound. "You don't look like the threatening type." "I'm not," Liam affirmed. "But I'm the type who meticulously documents everything. So if you wish to retain your employment, or perhaps your marriage, if that's your current entanglement, I suggest you gratefully accept the gift I'm offering and leave." That wiped the smug smirk clean off his face. He glanced at Freya, confusion, perhaps even a flicker of betrayal, clouding his features. Liam saw it. He hadn't known. He believed he was the secret, the intriguing subplot, not the catalyst crashing headfirst into the main narrative. The man took a wary step back. "You're both insane," he muttered before turning and striding briskly towards the stairwell. The door clicked shut, sealing the abrupt departure. Liam turned to Freya, his gaze piercing. "You invited that into our home," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. She offered no argument. She didn't even attempt one, because there was nothing left to say. "Stop. Before you judge, understand the real power move isn't always a confrontation. Sometimes, it's simply holding up a mirror." Freya didn't speak for a long time after the door closed, just stood there staring at the hallway, as if she could still perceive Callum vanishing down the stairs. Her hands were visibly trembling, and for the first time since this entire mess had begun, she looked smaller. not physically diminished, but somehow shrunken, as if the immense weight of her choices had finally bowed her spine. Liam walked past her without a word and poured himself a glass of water. His hand still trembled as he lifted it, not from rage, but from a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. He felt as though he'd been emotionally sprinting for hours, and now his legs had simply given out mid-race. The silence between them was more deafening than any argument they'd ever endured. And the most stinging part? She still hadn't uttered a single apology. She sat down slowly, her eyes darting towards the suitcase by the door again. Liam knew she wasn't just staring at it. She was contemplating all the items contained within. The clothes she'd packed for countless trips with him, the jacket he'd bought her last Christmas. Her entire other life, suddenly compartmentalized and zipped away like a memory ready for erasure. "Who else knows?" she finally asked, her voice barely audible. Liam turned to her. "About what precisely?" "About everything," she clarified, gesturing vaguely towards the door, the envelope, the brutal morning itself. He took a deep breath. "Just me for now." Her head dropped, a silent acknowledgement of the reprieve. "Liam, I never meant for it to go this far." "That's the thing, Freya," he said, setting his glass down with a soft thud. "It didn't just go this far. You took it there. Step by deliberate step, smile by carefully constructed smile, lie by devastating lie." She blinked rapidly, valiantly holding back the tears. Liam watched them sit stubbornly in the corners of her eyes, awaiting permission to fall. But she didn't grant it. Freya had always been remarkably adept at shedding tears at precisely the opportune moment. This was not one of those times. "You said you wanted to feel seen," Liam continued, his voice steady. "But I saw you every single day, even when you rolled your eyes at my jokes. Even when you dismissed me as too sensitive, I still saw you. You just stopped looking back." She buried her face in her hands, a defeated gesture. He could have stopped there. He probably should have. But something deep within him needed to complete the spiral, to fully lay bare the truth. He opened the drawer beneath the TV stand and pulled out a manila folder. He dropped it onto the coffee table with a soft thud. "What's this?" she whispered, her voice laced with dread. "Printouts," Liam stated calmly. "Photos, screenshots, timestamps. I started noticing things months ago, and I'm not as clueless as you clearly believe." She didn't touch the folder. "Why collect all that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Liam looked her straight in the eye. "Because I needed to remember I wasn't crazy." And now she knew. He had never been blind. He had just been quiet. But the silence was definitively over. Sometimes the quietest people hold the loudest secrets, ready to discover what meticulously gathered evidence can reveal. She stared at the folder as if it were ticking, as if it might explode and scatter the truth across the room in pieces too sharp to ever fully clean up. Liam said nothing. He didn't push. He simply sat down across from her and waited. He wanted her to be the one to open it, to see herself from the outside. No makeup, no filters, no carefully crafted excuses. Eventually, morbid curiosity won. She opened the folder slowly, as if the very act caused her physical pain. Her fingers shook as she flipped through the pages. The photos came first, meticulously saved screenshots of her text exchanges from the old tablet she'd forgotten he still had access to. Her messages were filled with coded phrases, emoji-laced secrets, and location pins that aligned all too perfectly with her late gym nights and supposed work dinners. Next came the time-stamped bank charges. Drinks for two, late-night ride shares from addresses that were decidedly not their home, and a hotel room booked under a name Liam had never heard, but which he had traced back to her rarely used secondary email address. She looked as though she wanted to crawl out of her own skin. "You were spying on me?" she finally hissed, the audacity of the question stunning Liam into momentary silence. He blinked, then responded, his voice even. "No, Freya. I was surviving you." She snapped the folder shut, as if that action alone could erase the damning evidence she'd just witnessed. "You had all this and never said anything." "I kept waiting for you to come clean," Liam said, his voice unwavering. "I gave you room to choose honesty. You chose to build a secret life instead." She stood up abruptly, pacing now, dragging her fingers frantically through her hair. "So what, Liam? You want me to admit I'm the villain? Fine. I messed up. You want tears? A dramatic scene?" Or is this just about punishing me in the most utterly theatrical way possible? I don't want drama, Freya. I wanted loyalty. I wanted truth. But those were never on your menu. She turned to him, her jaw tight, eyes flashing. Then why not just leave me sooner? And there it was. The question that had haunted him more intensely than her actual betrayal. Why did he wait? Why did he keep hoping? Why did he allow love to make him so utterly, painfully foolish? Because I still believed in you, Liam said, his voice thick with a decade of shattered dreams. Right up until you walked out in that dress and told me not to be jealous. She froze, her mouth opening, then closing again. No words came, because there were none left to utter. And that's when Liam delivered the part she truly hadn't seen coming. I spoke to your mother yesterday. Freya's face crumpled. She's coming over. The color drained from her skin, because the perfectly crafted mask she wore in front of everyone else, it was about to crack, irrevocably, in front of the one person who had known her potential for deception long before Liam ever did. And that's when I deployed my final, unexpected maneuver. Ready to learn what truly breaks a facade? She didn't sit down. She couldn't. Liam could tell simply by the rigid posture of her body, the uneven rhythm of her breath, that this wasn't a conversation she had ever imagined having. Not with him, not with her mother, not with anyone who dared to look beneath her perfectly curated exterior. She's not coming here, Freya managed after a beat, her voice barely holding together. Liam nodded slowly. Actually, she's already on her way. Freya's eyes darted to the window, as if expecting to see her mother's discerning gaze already pulling into the driveway. Liam knew this would rattle her, not because she feared a scolding, but because her mother was the one person who genuinely believed Freya had built something real and enduring with him, that she had finally found a safe harbor, as her mother had once described their marriage when the world felt too sharp. Freya tried to pace, then stopped herself abruptly. What are you hoping to prove by dragging her into this? She demanded, a desperate edge to her voice. That you become unrecognizable, Liam stated quietly, and someone needed to remind you who you used to be. When a knock came 20 minutes later, Freya didn't move. Liam opened the door. Eleanor Carlyle stepped in slowly, her gaze sweeping over both of them, as if she already knew more than they could ever tell her. She greeted Liam warmly, then turned to Freya and said, her voice firm, sit down. We're going to talk. And for once, Freya, you're going to listen. Liam didn't stay for the full, undoubtedly agonizing conversation. He left them in the living room with the damning folder resting on the coffee table, the packed suitcase still waiting silently by the door, and the unvarnished truth finally breathing in the open air. He walked outside, exhaled deeply, and for the first time in months, he didn't feel like the pathetic one. In the weeks that followed, something quietly incredible happened. Freya signed the final divorce papers without a fight. She moved out, returned the keys, and even penned him a letter. There was no begging, no manipulative ploys, just a raw, honest apology. Liam didn't respond. Instead, he began the quiet work of rebuilding his own life. A new apartment, a new city, a small teaching position at a local college. He joined a local book club, forged a few genuine friendships, and slowly, tentatively, started laughing again. And one sun-drenched afternoon, while walking through a serene park, he met someone. Not someone perfect, but simply someone kind. Someone who saw him not as a fixer-upper, not as a backup plan, but as entirely enough. Freya had once smirked and said, try not to be too jealous. Liam didn't have to try, because she had surrendered something truly real for a fleeting thrill. And he, Liam Westbrook, had walked away with peace, clarity, and the kind of love that never needed drama to feel vibrantly alive. But what if ending one chapter is truly the beginning of your best story?